What's up, Murph? How have you been this week?
I'm good. I'm good. I had like one of the roughest weeks in my career last week,
Uh-oh, what happened?
and I think I'm gonna like start a new segment or gonna start like, what have you learned? Like, what did you learn in your last transaction? Like, hey, what did you learn in your last? So check this out. I'll make this really brief because if I told you the story, we'd be here all time, the entire time. But we had a home that ended up being a manufactured home,
Uh,
and obviously you hear manufactured.
know that it was a
What?
manufactured.
What's that?
No, it was a manufactured home.
Well, here I was. That's what I was gonna get to. We found out a couple of days before closing it was manufactured home, but this is the craziest part. So this is like seriously some my advice to everybody out there. Um, it was listed as a single family. The title company had it as a single family. The county assessor had it as a single family. God, you think the appraiser is going to find out it's a manufactured appraisal came back in as a single family, and everybody and we just found the deed of trust when we were just digging up some HOA stuff, and all of a sudden this deed of trust popped up out of nowhere 2 days before closing, and sure enough, it had HUD tags on it, manufactured, and it just threw everything into a tailspin. And so, I sat there, I'm like, okay, as a lender, I looked at the house and I go, that looks like it looks like a manufactured home. I was like, that looks like a manufactured home. And everybody told me no. I'm like, well, I was just trying to figure out what I did wrong. And it was, I guess my advice is, um, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
A few times in the last couple of weeks. It's so funny you say that.
uh,
Well, I'm sorry, Chris. I'm sorry that you had such a crappy transaction, but you sure learned a lot, didn't you?
learned a ton. Learned a ton, and we're working on saving it.
Trust your gut because you knew.
Gosh. Oh, it was just so one of those things. But I'm like, I was like, title will definitely know. Title will have this, no problem. I'm like, no, single family home. I'm like, what? All right. So, anyways, that was my. What did I learn now? But we have how about you? Anything?
Oh no, but I'm excited to introduce our guest
Yes, let's
today.
do it.
We have an information security expert on. Mr. DiAstra has over 20 years in IT and information security. For the past 7 years, he's been with Summit Business Technologies, a Maryland-based information technology and security company, and he specializes in cloud data security. So we're going to talk about how that applies to real estate today. Alec DiAstra, thank you for joining us on Real Estate Ready.
Woo!
Thank you very much. I just want to get one point across right now as we begin this entire thing. This is not who's after your data. This is not what a hacker is. Everybody thinks this is a hacker and these are the people who are after you, but they're not. They all look like this. They're just regular people. And I just want to make that point real clear because we've got a lot of topics to cover, but first and foremost thing I want to say is that the people who are out to get you are not what you think they are.
Ooh.
We're just gonna lead with that. We'll be back next week with part 2 of this interview. No, I mean, Alec, this is awesome that you're coming on, and like, hey, this is perfect timing for I guess it's our Halloween episode, one of our Halloween episodes.
It's in October. It's Halloween.
Okay, that's right. And then obviously with everything that's going on, so why don't you give everybody a little background on how you got into? Holy cow, you're doing cloud data security. You are the IT expert. How did you get into this crazy world?
So there was back when I was a kid, I decided I like computers. That's pretty much how it started. I've been working in computers professionally for over 20 years now. It's probably about 24 years now, and I'm 42. So since I was 18, I've actually been doing computer and data security. That's been my bread and butter. I've done a couple other things back and forth. Everybody switches jobs, but I was always big with computers. And when back in the day, security wasn't even a big thing. There weren't enough people on the internet, and by the time security became a thing, which was early on in the infancy of the internet. If you remember the AOL days, that's when all of a sudden things started getting hacked. Yeah. And I was incredibly interested in that as a kid. I was a participant. I wore different color hats when it came to that stuff, but it was just always interested me. And now I work helping other people protect their data from people who know the same things I know.
That's so cool. You know, I turned 40 in a week and a half, so I'm right there kind of close to you. And I remember the AOL dial up and all that stuff. And my mom, I worked for Hewlett Packard for a number of years. And my dad was big in IT, but yeah, I can only imagine the transformation it's taken since it first kind of started. It's crazy. But you know, looking over a couple of things, I think the number one thing, when it comes to real estate and technology and people working from home, I think we just dive right into it. One of the question I had for you is, here we are all working from home in our living rooms, logged in. I'm a lender. I have to like do a security password in order to get into my database every time I log into my computer to view my system. And my company's put in all of this, I guess, protection, for lack of a better word. But you know, as a real estate agent, a lot of your independent contractors, whether you're a small broker or not, you might not have the IT department down the street that's going to, hey, I'll take care of you. And how can you protect yourself working from home in this world we're living in?
Well, one thing I can tell you, people working from home, or if you're like me in a secret bunker somewhere, there's the illusion of security. And the question of how can we protect ourselves is not ever going to start with an answer of, make sure you have virus protection and use your VPN. Those things are important.
What's VPN?
For the virtual private network. So most companies, they'll even mortgage companies, lending companies, they'll the people that are working from home, they'll have a direct connection to their office or to their servers at a data center, so that the information, the information passing is secure. But that's not really where security is. Those are all layers of security to keep people from snooping on your data, to keep people from, you're not transferring information in clear text that can be snooped on. So it's important, but security doesn't start there. Security starts with people. And the number one thing that I would tell anyone who's trying to keep their data secure, working from home, sending files around, is to, use whatever your company has implemented, whatever. If you don't have an IT department, it's not hard to do a little bit of research. There's a lot of secure storage and ways to transfer files. But the number one thing is to keep a lookout for anybody or any systems that are trying to get your data, because it's not really, like I said, it's not about all those layers of protection. They're wonderful, but if I can make a phone call and get you to bypass all those layers of protection, they don't matter. And it's really easy for people to be duped. And it's not even their fault, because everything seems legitimate. They'll get a phone call, or they'll get an email, or they'll get some other form of communication that seems 100% legitimate, and it'll ask them to perform some task that sounds 100% correct. So they do it, especially when, the process of buying a home, all of your information needs to be out there. Your bank statements, your social security information, all kinds of information about your debts. There's a lot of what's called PII, or personally identifiable information, that you have to transfer. And let's back up for 1 second and just say something else that's really important. The systems that everybody out there is working with, the mortgage lending systems, the real estate systems, all of those, those are all 10 years behind. In property, in real estate and mortgage lending specifically, those systems are old. They've been around for a long time, and so there's all kinds of weird idiosyncrasies, and those idiosyncrasies and how odd it is to work with these pieces of software has become a huge problem in the industry, because somebody calls you up and say, oh, hey, this piece of software is not working correctly. Can you send something to this email address for me? No one's going to question that, because we all know those systems don't always work the way they're supposed to. And in doing something like that would be a social engineering phone call. You can circumvent all the security in the world just by convincing somebody to do something they're not supposed to.
So real quick, in a minute, I'll let you dive in. I just want to follow up with that. So here we are 10 years behind, and I agree. There is a lot of, even our biggest banks in the world, like JP Morgan Chase and all these big banks, reported earnings yesterday and today. And one of the biggest things I hear everybody say is, how can an industry like this be so far behind the fact that you don't need to go to a branch anymore. You know, I mean,
Nope.
everybody, you have Venmos and you have PayPals and you have all these different systems, whether it's cryptocurrency. The fact that there's banks out there that still have a branch to make you walk in is crazy. And my point is, like, here we are, we're 10 years behind. Do you think that what's going on with COVID, and do you think it has sped up this entire process by decades, or do you think by years? What is your take on, like, maybe we were 10 years behind, but now all of a sudden we're in this new world and we're never going to go back to the new normal. That's just not, I don't
Not yet.
know. And do you think this is now, at least in terms of maybe a positive, this sped up this process where, like, companies like Caliber Home Loans or all these are like, wow, we need to get our shit together and get this stuff figured out.
Well, yeah, yes and no. So it's an arms race.
Mhm.
It's always has been an arms race since the very beginning. We create, the internet. We have the very first internet, and as soon as that went public, there were ways to exploit data and information. And then we figured out a way to stop that. And they figure out a way to get it. So it's always going to be an arms race. And the fact of the matter is that security itself, digital security, has gotten much better. As far as what it's going to do, like this COVID and everybody working from home, I think what it has done is caused a lot of companies to reevaluate, especially in the beginning when there was
Totally
no
agree.
choice. The data can't stay in house anymore. The data has to go out into the world.
Right.
And and I know that my company, we had a lot of business at the very beginning of COVID. I mean, tons of people wanted to set up VPNs. They wanted to have like remote desktops and data in a data center instead of on a server at a business address. So all of these different things have changed. And the problem is that everybody's kind of settled down and everybody's figured out what works. And once people figure out what works, um, we haven't gotten more secure. With COVID, we've gotten less secure. With everyone working from home, some companies are taking the right steps, but when you're basically putting band-aids on all of these problems,
Right.
and you're creating more cracks for there to be holes in, or more
Yeah.
meshes for there to be holes in, and more cracks in the system because you have to allow access. So I can give you a real world example in like 3 seconds. If your company wants to allow you and a bunch of other employees to access data, there's different ways to do that securely, but every way that you do it, you're creating a different vector of attack for someone else to say, well, if I can get included in that group, or if I can circumvent this one thin layer of security they've propped up, then I've got all their data because they had to open it up to the outside world. So now we have a lot of data that's open to the outside world that wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And while security is getting better, it's not perfect.
Right. Crazy. It's crazy. So crazy. Mm.
All the questions that I had jotted down, Chris answered.
I'm sorry.
But I did want to say something to what you were saying, Alec, is talking about when people, when Chris asked the question, do you feel like COVID has accelerated this desire to, create security? But like you were saying, Alec, we just opened up more things to secure.
More methods for people to get in.
And then the other thing you had said is once the learning curve is gone. People are comfortable. They're not super motivated for that long lasting change that needs to come with that. People got comfy.
Yeah. And there's things you can do. There's things, there's attitudes that you can take on and just to help you with that stuff. There's not always a lot you can do with, like you said, not everybody has an IT group. Not everybody has a group of people, sitting in an office trying to figure out ways to make you more secure. If your company doesn't have that, I would suggest, maybe consulting with somebody and trying to, get that. But, looking at what data you're sharing and how you're sharing it, because that's obviously one of the first steps, but one of the biggest steps is the mindset that we decide we're going to take on, and how we can apply that to every situation where information is transferred between people digitally, because that's really at the end of the day what we're talking about. There's information, whether that be bank account information about money, information about, your finances, information even about, just your home address, all these little bits of information that go out there like flotsam and jetsam in the wind. Every time you're transferring information, you need to think about what steps you're taking to secure that information.
So you mentioned some attitudes that you can take on. Can you give us an example of what some of those would be?
Sure. The number one thing you need to do is approach every piece of information with the value that that information is actually bestowed. So something like a social security number, it's not really a big deal. It's just a number, or a home address, or even something like your bank statement or your pay stubs. These are the kind of information that oftentimes lenders need, or even information you might be sending back and forth to a real estate client that doesn't even have to do with any of the financial stuff, just stuff they're interested in, houses they're looking at. All of that information, everything you send might contain something that is personally identifiable and could be used. Even just familiar conversation can be twisted. So being skeptical and keeping a security mindset, it's difficult to do. Everyone's got a job to do. It's not, security is not the first and foremost thing that they think about, but it needs to be, because at the end of the day, when you're talking about this types of information, you're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting your clients. And by protecting your clients, you're also protecting your business. So if your clients were to end up having some sort of negative outcome from some data getting out there, who do you think they're going to blame? It doesn't matter if it's your fault or not. They're going to blame you because you were the person who was working with them as a professional. Mm-hmm. So just view data with the importance that is due that data, even the littlest things. And in a little while, I'll give you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about.
What device? You got email, you got phone, where do you see most of the time? Because I feel like these hackers that get in there, they become part of the system. It's not like they're going in there and breaking in through the firewall and stealing your passwords. Like these clients that fall victim, they're allowing them to either come into their world. And is it usually email? Is email usually the one? Or right now, I don't really see I have anybody call me on the phone and go, give me your social security number.
Well, that's not really what's going to happen. Email is a vector. Phone absolutely is actually an even more important vector, because when we're talking about specifically the real estate markets, mm-hmm. Or the real estate industry, I'm sorry. When we're talking about that, you have to realize that as soon as that process starts, as soon as a prospective home seller talks to a listing agent, or a prospective home buyer is talking to their agent, as soon as those relationships begin, at that moment, from that point forward, everybody in that process, but especially the actual client, becomes incredibly vulnerable, because from that point forward, there is a trusted relationship created, and you're going to be asking for information. They're going to be giving you information, and that relationship, more than a device specifically, it's those relationships that become exploited, and the confusion of the process. But I would say that when it comes to communication devices, you should be using the right device for the right time. And I will say that if it has to do with transferring money, to if you're your listing agent, or I'm sorry, your real estate agent calls you and says, hey, you've got to get some earnest money transferred over. That's the next step in the process. They'll might give you some information, or they might have the bank send you some information that where it's going to go. Don't ever send money to anybody at any point unless you have confirmed all the information with a phone call that you initiated. And I can't stress that you initiated enough,
right.
Because if Amanda were to call one of her clients and say, hey, the information I sent you for the earnest money transfer is wrong. I'm going to shoot you over an email real quick. Just use this information instead. So that's it sounds great, but if somebody were to just get on the line and say, hi, I'm calling from Amanda's office. This is her, I'm her executive assistant, or I'm her administrative assistant. I just want to call because we had an issue with the email we just sent over to you. I'm going to shoot you over another email. And all of a sudden there's this person who's using the trust you have in Amanda to send you fake information, and you're out, 10 grand because you just transferred money to a different, a couple of different numbers. Those are the things that get exploited more than a particular medium. It's relationships and the confusion of the process.
I think that's a great point.
It's so manipulative.
That's what it's about. I mean, it's when you're hacking, that's the point.
I mean, you're like you exploiting like a relationship, like, and also ruining a relationship in the process.
You could be ruining a business you could be ruining an entire business, because can you imagine if that happened and the people who sent the money all of a sudden come to you and say, hey, what's going on? And you're just like, I don't know. Because how do you handle that situation? And do you think that's going to help you get more business? So that's why security is so important, because it's not just them, it's your business you're protecting. And there's things you can do to help protect your clients. There's protocols you can put in place. There's all these little things that you can do to put yourself in a better position. You can't always do it 100%. There is no such thing as a 100% secure process, but with just a few steps, you can make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what are those steps, Alec? Let's be better for our clients.
All right. Well, so the first thing is to know what's coming. The number one threat, or the number 1 and 2 threats, and I don't know which order they're going to be in, are going to be direct data acquisition or direct data thievery. And the second one, and by direct data, I mean actually stealing digital data in its digital format in a digital way. So that would mean, maybe if somebody's computer was compromised and a bad actor was in their email and was monitoring all of the information going back and forth, they would know exactly when to strike, exactly when to send that fake email to get that money out. So that would be direct. And the second is social engineering. And social engineering is the number 1 problem we have right now. Like I said, there's digital stuff. There are layers of security as long as you're using those layers of security. But the second is social engineering is huge, because it doesn't, again, as I said at the beginning, it doesn't matter how many layers of security you have, they can get right around it just by saying, hi, I'm calling from Amanda's office. And all of a sudden, all of those layers of security are gone.
It's so true. It's so true.
So you were asking what you can actually do, and be aware of what's out there and set up a protocol. Have security protocols for you and your clients. These would be, and it doesn't, there isn't a set in stone method. This would be something you'd have to figure out works best for your business. But anytime information is transferred, always request it the same way. In other words, send requests from one email address. Make sure that your clients know that all communication are going to come from that one email address only, period. You can set up that anytime personal identifiable information is requested, that it'll always be followed by, always have a phone call before the request is sent. So you can layer your communications, make it more difficult. If someone says, well, I just got an email requesting information, but she didn't call me, they would know, that your clients would know that that's not protocol. Drive it home that whatever protocols you have for security, whatever little methods you have to make sure that all communications are secure or correct or valid, then drive it home to your clients that this is how we communicate. A lot of times there's secure upload software or a website where you can securely upload documents. Those kind of things are used a lot. Well, if that's the case, you use like DocuSign for for
Right.
certain things. Make sure they know exactly which websites and document tools you will be using, and that those are the only ones. Make sure that they know that if they try to send you a document and they don't use the proper process, don't just take the document and conveniently upload it for the client, because now it's your responsibility. Delete the email, reply to them, tell them that I had to delete this email. Can you please upload this through the secure? In other words, don't let them lower the security, because they're putting your business at risk then.
Right.
So make them adhere. Say, this is the process. And at the end of the day, these are people that are trusting you to pick a house for them and to go through the contract negotiations. They're going to trust you when you say, this is the only way we do it. And as long as it's clear up front, everything's communicated up front, there's a clear process and protocol, most of the time you're not going to have a problem. And if you do, like I said, enforce it. Make sure that they know that this is the rules and this is how it has to be.
It's like when I hear a borrower doesn't know how to, they're not computer savvy. I just go, I mean, it makes me cringe a little bit. But not, and to your point, it's the social engineering. That's because that particular borrower who's a little like, oh, I'm not sure how to upload or do this or do that. And all of a sudden they're getting contact. Oh, Chris Murphy's assistant here, just send me over those documents. I'll be like, oh, thank you. I don't want to handle the email and uploading. And now all of a sudden,
Yeah, it's even worse than that, because can you imagine? We all know that there's all kinds of things that change, and there's so many different processes, and we all know that working with, like, say, title companies can be a pain. So if one of your clients were to call you and say, hey, the title company called me and they told me that this thing had changed, you might be apt to just say, oh, that happens. Title companies do that. And if you do that, and it just so happens that person, that client called you and said, is this valid? And you kind of dismissed it because this is kind of like a thing that happens.
mm-hmm.
You're not the only one that knows that that's a thing that happens. And they're counting on you. They're counting on the fact that you're not the only one that knows that that's a thing, because you would just say, yeah, that sounds about right. And just that little, just dismissive of their phone call, and then their earnest money or their deposit goes somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Or the contract that it's got all kinds of information in it goes somewhere else. And, they don't get a house because of it. That could be huge. Or they can't sell their house, or their money is gone. So there's all kinds of different little things like that, which is why I said you have to be security, that mindset. If you get that phone call and there's a change and you're not aware of it and you feel like you should be, verify it. Make sure, ask the question, did you call them or did they call you? And if the person received the phone call, you should just tell them, hang up with me and call the title company back directly. That goes back to the don't do anything with money unless there's a phone call, it's confirmed and you initiated it.
Yeah, it's funny. When I set up wire transfer, I'm not allowed to actually be involved in that. I actually say the borrower will call the title company and say, I am borrower A. I would like to set up a wire transfer from my bank, for this property, and they'll then give you the information, and then that borrower will then call their bank. So they're making both phone calls and setting everything up. With that being said,
but what if a phone call happened right after that?
I was just gonna say, like that. Okay, so like here you are. That is kind of how it happens right now. Here we are, October 2020. Now, with that being said, I don't know if there's additional information. I have never been on that phone call because I'm legally not allowed to do that. But I mean, yeah, there's so many opportunities. You're right, where somebody could come in there and call back and go, "Oh, by the way, I gave you the wrong routing number."
Right, and that's it. We gave you the wrong routing and account number.
Yeah.
Go ahead and before you even right after that call is set up, a phone call comes in, and let's say let's say the caller ID is spoofed, so it looks like it's coming from that institution. Now the question might be, how do they know that when to call? Then there's a lot of different ways to know that information. It could be that they're monitoring traffic in the middle from the financial institution. They could be monitoring a router that is in your neighborhood. There's all kinds of different ways to figure out what's happening. And it can get really, that's the technical side of it. More often than not, it ends up being that the person has a adware and spyware on their computer and they don't even know it. So every single communication via email is being, reviewed, and there's so much data there. What these people like to do is, instead of just trying to hack you and figure out how to get money out of you, they'll sit on it, and as people start making financial transactions, they'll jump in on those things, because that's where the big money is. It's easy to get $50, $100, $300 out of somebody by locking their computer and telling them that you'll unlock it for a certain amount of money. That's what ransomware does. But it's a lot better if they just sit on the fact that they're in your computer and wait for you to make a financial transaction. And they'll be ready. They will have been collecting data on your system for months, let's say. It's scary. It's really scary out there. And it's even scarier when, as you said, people are not computer savvy. You tell them, well, go to your bank website and download your information and go ahead and send it to me through this website. And I don't know how to do that. And my computer's slow. Let me see if I can do it. Their computer's already incredibly infected. All of their data is all over the world. You don't know that as their, as their agent or their lender. And every transaction they're doing is being monitored. So how do you get around that?
Tell us.
Yeah. Wait, Amanda, I was just going to say, hey, we should walk through a regular transaction.
Sure.
And Alec, you let us know
what areas I can hack
what areas they should really watch out for. Okay. And so if and this is for as a lender, as a real estate agent, when we have this transaction, and I think you hit on the first part, and that's the earnest money. Yep. So let's, earnest money can be a wire transfer. It can be a cashier's check. And I guess I just start off, and the same thing was like the cash to close. When you go to the closing table, you can do a wire transfer, a cashier's check. Would you tell everybody to go cashier's check?
So no, I wouldn't.
Okay.
It can be a pain. If it's convenient for you to go into your bank and get a cashier's check, if you feel secure carrying that cashier's check, and you feel confident that you can take it to the financial institution and get it done, that's papers is going to be more secure. That piece of paper is going to be better. But if you're buying a house out of state and you're doing a remote closing or whatever, sometimes that's not even an option. I mean, you could get a cashier's check, then you got to put it in the mail. So for convenience, you might want to do a wire transfer. I will say that a cashier's check's a lot, like I said, it's a physical thing. It's a lot harder to hack. If you've got it on your person, you're talking about physical security. They would have to steal it from you after it was endorsed, and figure out a way to transfer that information. Normally, there's a little bit more protection on cashier's checks these days. If it were to go missing, you could call your bank immediately, because they're normally made out to a specific other financial institution. So I would say, if you can, skip the digital methods, then use the cashier's check. But I could still hack it, because you're saying that you're going to tell them to go get a cashier's check for a particular financial institution, right?
Yeah.
What if I call them and tell them to change the name on that check?
Yeah.
So now the name is different. So if the name on the check is different and it's for some shell organization or some whatever, couple of initials, that cashier's check could now be physically stolen in cash. Now that's a lot. We're talking about a little bit more of a physical risk here. But
understanding the risks on everything.
But the fact of the matter is that you could still, you still need to verify that the information that when you go to get the cashier's check is accurate. So that would only be the one little place where that could happen.
Okay. And then with wire transferring, I know I just kind of explained to you how I set up the wire transfer. What tip? I think it sounds like you want to be the one initiating the phone calls in any type of transaction like that.
Anything. So if let's say, or verifying. So if you say, hey, you're going to be working with bank A, and I'm your client, and I bank at bank B, and you say, go ahead and call bank A. They have the information, so I would call bank A, and then bank A would say, this is the information. Maybe they'll email that information over. Right there's a spot where it can be, it can be intercepted. When you're talking to a human being for the call you initiated, write down that information, because if they say, I'm going to send this over to you via email, so you have it in front of you, and somebody intercepts that message and changes the information, and you didn't write it down to verify that everything's correct, then you're going to go by the information in the email, and now it's wrong. So it's step one can be hacked. When you go to call your bank, it's all about that information that wherever you're going to tell your bank to send that money. Mm-hmm. So anywhere in the process where that information is relayed, it should be verified every time, which is why I said you initiate the phone call, mm-hmm. tell them to give you the information, the routing number, the account number, or whatever information is there. Write it all down on a piece of paper. Then if they do send you that email, verify that what's on the paper and what's in the email match. Once you have that match, then go to your bank. Otherwise, it's all about that number, because if you once it's transferred, it's gone. Right. Once your bank transfers and the transfer is confirmed, if the information was in any part of that process incorrect, as the moment it actually goes through, it's going to be immediately withdrawal moved, and it'll be in, I don't know, Switzerland within minutes. It'll be converted to Bitcoin within minutes.
Okay, wire transfer. That's all good stuff. Amanda, I'm looking at my lending hat right now, but
so we're walking through a transaction. I guess maybe what I would like to think is like, so there's a lot of information. I of course always tell my clients to call the title company directly. That's all, from day one. I don't want to
closer a name. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But there's a lot of other information that's being passed around via email that isn't as important or a high dollar item as like a wire transfer, bank account numbers and information. What are, you think about like addresses, even the names of kids and stuff like that. People, and you're saying basically potentially we could all have a predator right now just stalking us, mining our important data and just waiting for the right time to strike, essentially.
Yeah. And if I know the name of the street you grew up on and the name of your dog, your first
or
pet,
your mother's maiden name,
all those little bits of information. I'm reminded of a quiz I saw online, and thousands of people had answered this quiz, and it was all kinds of different simple things like the name of your first pet. And I'm like, why are people giving this information up? And actually, it brings me to another point, which is that information that you use to secure yourself it's not secure. If
everyone knows what your dog's name is, especially
right, and the name of the name of the street you grew up on, and your first pet's name, everybody knows on the internet that those are the two things that you use to make up your, I don't know. Some people say, that's your porn star name. They have these things. What's the name of your first street and your pet?
Yeah. Well, Buster Smith.
Everybody puts it out there. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
And the answer, mine's hilarious. And you just gave away two of your biggest answers to those security questions.
I never do that, by the way. And I was like, why are people doing this? This is so dumb.
You were asking about what you're talking about, less impactful data is still impactful. Your mother's maiden name is impactful. Where you currently reside could be the first street you lived on. It could be impactful. All of that data can be impactful. And the way that you transfer information is important. So that's why I said using secure tools.
Okay, so secure tools, like what?
All right, so if you work real estate professional and you're working for a company like, I don't know, Ryland Homes or Remax or whatever, and your company most likely provides you with access to a couple of tools that are super important. The number one tool that is super important that gets circumvented in pretty much every single real estate transaction is the secure document upload portal. Those portals exist specifically because, when you look in the upper left-hand corner and you go to the website, it says HTTPS. That means that the information that you're sending to the site gets encrypted on your computer is transferred in an encrypted way and stored on the server. If it was intercepted in the middle of that process, so between the server and your computer, your browser, if it was intercepted in the middle, it would be unreadable. The only two places that information is readable is at the server and and when you upload it on your computer. So if you're not using that secure document upload portal and you just are, like I said, every single real estate transaction, somebody emails you a document that is like a bank statement. Every single one. I've seen so many people do it. I work with lots of companies that do lots of different things, and people are always circumventing these tools. The moment that happens, that means that email was bounced across multiple servers to get to where it is. It went through its own little path through the internet, and any single one of those nodes along the way, it's possible that information was snooped on. So it's all you need is one relay server out there that's sending copies of every email. You don't have control over that. When you click the send button, it goes all over the place. So if you transfer data in an encrypted format, that helps a lot. And the number one way to do that is to use the tools. If you have access to these tools, use the tools provided to you by the company you work for. If you don't work for a company, there are secure document upload portals as a service that are out there, and you should use one. You should not have people emailing you their bank statements and their their pay stubs. You should not be getting these things via email as attached PDFs. I know I've actually, in years past been responsible for the same thing. We all just want to not use that stupid tool that's a pain in the butt to use, but it's there for a reason. So that's the number one thing to protect that type of data.
Is there a number two?
There's always a number two. The number two thing, if you want to
common sense, is common sense part of this?
It's vigilance. Be skeptical. Be skeptical of any. I'll actually give you a couple of hints here. These are different social engineering methods that are, if you're aware of these few things, they'll help you out immensely. Be skeptical of anything that's urgent. Anything that has to be done right now, really quickly and urgent things. Like, I need this immediately. I need a copy. Just reply to this and give me a copy of whatever blank. Forward me. I lost the copy of our contract that has all of our information in it. Can you forward me your copy? It's an emergency. I know this isn't normal. Anything that seems like that, anything that's urgent, anything that is outside of the norm, that's not part of the process that you set up with your clients initially. Anything. So most of the time, you're really, because most of the people we're talking to here are going to be real estate professionals in one way or another. This is more about you protecting your clients. You can get, I'm not saying that these things aren't going to work for you too, because you could definitely be a target as a real estate professional. It's just, as soon as, like I said, as soon as that relationship starts, it's the trust in you that's going to be manipulated. So be skeptical of things that are urgent. Be skeptical of anything where the instructions are changed, where there's some sort of change in instructions. Be skeptical of anybody who's using strong arm methodologies, who call your client. You get a call from your client and they say, the title company called me and they told me that they wouldn't accept my payment, and that I had to do this, this, and this. Or my bank called me and they told me there was a problem with my account, so I had to do this, this, and like those strong arms techniques. They're often or almost always a sign of an attempt at social engineering. And anything that you're asked to do where, like I said, wasn't part of the process, didn't use the protocol, but maybe just wasn't previously communicated. A step that just showed up out of nowhere that doesn't maybe make sense. Or something, especially since you guys being the professionals, you kind of know the processes. Your clients don't know the processes. They don't know. They don't know who's going to call them. They don't know that. So you have to really drive home what and how and who and when communications should be expected, so that anything outside of that, they can be skeptical of it, because they don't know. They just don't know. I mean, I bought a house. It was I did it, but it was a process that, if it wasn't for my wife, who's incredibly organized, and I had a like really great real estate agent, I don't think I could have gotten through that process, because if it was all this information flying back and forth, and signed this and changed that, and I could have, that's the time when you're going to get hit. So you have to be clear about what is happening. That's probably one of your going to be your biggest thing, is that skepticism and clarity.
I love that. It's funny, Alec, when I tell people about the secure document upload portal that you're talking about, and this is great. I learned so much in this whole conversation, but they look at that as like, that could be hacked. They look at emailing me a document as more secure, going through the secure document upload portal.
So,
and I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I had the best answer to those questions, but now, after talking with you and how it goes from server to server, and when you use that secure document upload portal, if it does get interrupted or intercepted in between there, they can't read anything. It's encrypted. I didn't know that. And I didn't know, when things were coming in, it's like, oh, anything coming into my email is encrypted, but it's bouncing from server to server before eventually it arrives into your encrypted email. I mean, I think that is huge. Telling everybody. Amen.
That's the other thing you kind of, Amanda, go ahead. You look like you really want to say something.
Well, I want to know if there's steps that I can be taking right now as someone who has the potential of being hacked, right? To lessen my chances. Is this why we clear our caches?
No, it's not why we clear our caches.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna get to that just one second. One thing you'd actually made me think of something, and that is that it's difficult because, like you said, you didn't know that, but you're going to have to be prepared to answer questions for your clients.
Yeah.
And
if you don't know the answers.
Yeah. If you don't know the answers, it's okay to not know the answers.
Right.
But you should probably find a resource. I know that Amanda has a resource that she would go to. That'd probably be me. If she had a question about digital security. But if you don't have one, because if your client has a question that you can't answer, it'd be nice to get that question for them. And Absolutely. To answer your question, Amanda, the steps that you can take, there's some practical steps you can take. You can get rid of all of your social media, and you can make sure you have up-to-date virus protection. You can that helps a little bit. And I mean, it's virus protection used to be thought of as the end all and be all of computer digital security. We had to have really strong virus protection. It's true. You still need strong virus protection. And I'm not going to discount its importance, but you need to have strong mental processes and security focused mindsets. So if I was going to tell you, Amanda, what you can do yourself to stop yourself from getting hacked and your business from getting hacked, there's the digital side. So make sure you have a good firewall, where you make sure your data is stored in a secure location, in a secure way. Make sure that you have your information backed up. That's something that most people don't think about, but as professionals, actually, this is a big deal. If you don't have backups of all of your data and some secure way to store the information that you need to use in your daily life, you're messing up. Because I always look at it like this: if I were to take all of your digital devices and break them and tell you that you weren't allowed to have any of the data that's stored on any of them anymore right now, if I were to come to your home and take all of them from you, would you be able to do your job tomorrow? And the answer to that question is no for a lot of people. And that's what happens when your house floods or your house burns down, or you have an electromagnetic pulse of some sort causes all of your stuff to get wiped. That doesn't happen very often, don't worry. But if there's a catastrophic event that you need to recover from and you don't have backups, that could end your business. And I mean, gone. We've seen it happen.
If the computer software that's out there right now, if you go to Best Buy or whatever, Amazon, and you buy a new laptop for your business as a realtor, lender, whatever,
Sure.
Are these new devices built? They come pre-built with a lot of this software in terms of.
The answer to that question is yes, and absolutely not. That every single laptop you buy out there or desktop computer you buy out there.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to get into what platform you prefer. If you,
Sure.
I'm platform agnostic. If it's Linux, Mac, PC, I don't care.
Always heard Lenovo's were great.
Well, so the fact of the matter is, whatever you get, you're either going to be using one of 3 operating systems, unless you're a hacker yourself and you're doing some kind of weird computer stuff. And if that's the case, you don't need to be listening to this. You're either going to be using Apple or Microsoft, Apple OS X or Microsoft Windows, or possibly using Linux. And again, if you're using Linux, you probably already know this information. So if you go buy a Lenovo or an HP or a Compaq or anything that's not an Apple, you're going to be using Windows. And that particular manufacturer is going to have their product, and it's going to come with tools. It's going to come with antivirus, and they're going to say, we've got whatever, all built-in security.
Yeah. That's
well and good. If every single one of those requires you have a subscription. If you don't have that subscription, you don't have the security anymore. Security costs money.
Yeah.
And every vendor in the world has figured that out. So you should have a good built-in security tool on your device. It doesn't necessarily have to be the one that came with it, but it should be from somebody who is a trustworthy vendor. It should be a paid product, not one of these free deals. There's a lot of good free software out there. We could get into free and open source software. That's a whole nother conversation for a different podcast, but you should have a paid product from a security vendor that is trusted. There's a Bitdefender, Sophos, ESET. There's all these different companies out there that are real, well-known security software that have built-in firewalls and built-in like web browser plugins that help you to keep from going to sites that might be infected as well. So that's good to have, but don't necessarily assume that just because your laptop's new that it's secure, because that you couldn't be further from the truth.
Okay, no, that's good to know. I think it's important to know. I only have two more questions. This has been amazing. They're really short. I guess my second to last one is Dashlane. My wife and I use Dashlane. What are your thoughts on Dashlane? And for those that don't know Dashlane, it's basically it's an app, website, whatever you want to call it, where it stores your passwords. And so, but I like it and my wife loves it, and I've been bad about it. I'm trying to get better at it, but it'll create a password for you for, like, let's say you go to Amazon or whatever website you go to, and it will make it'll have exclamation points, dashes. It's not going to be your dog's first name, and it's not going to be your online porn name or whatever. What are your thoughts on that, Alec? I mean, because it just kind of inputs it in there. Any thoughts on that, Dashlane?
So there's a lot of different password management tools out there. There's a Keeper and Dashlane and 1Password. They all do the same thing, like you said. Every single one of them is a plugin for your browser. Some of them store your information locally in an encrypted format. Some of them store it online in an encrypted format, and it manages it. And the nice thing is you go to a website and it fills in the password for you. You don't even have to remember it.
Yeah.
And they're all very good tools. As a matter of fact, they're highly recommended because they are, if you don't know your password, and your password is stored in an encrypted tool, and it is easy to update your password, and you don't have to remember the 12, 30, 50 different passwords, you're much more apt to use different passwords for all of your sites, which you should be doing anyway, and you all know that, and none of you are. There's not a single person listening to this podcast,
Guilty.
I guarantee it,
Guilty.
that does not have the same password for multiple websites. I'm actually going to give you another little thing that might scare you slightly. There's a website called Have I Been Pwned? Pwned is spell is spelled PWND. And have I been pwned? If you Google it or just go to the .com, you'll see it. You can put your email address in. Don't worry, it's safe. They're not harvesting email addresses. But don't trust me. Do your research. Always be skeptical of everything you hear on the internet.
I was just going to say, I'm skeptical of you right now.
You should be. You should go maybe do a little bit of research before you use the tool. And it'll tell you if your email address has shown up in any of these giant data breaches.
What? So say that again. Have I been pwned.com?
PWND, yes. Have I been PWN as in Nancy D.
Oh, N. Sorry, I had N. Okay. PWND. Pwned. Okay.
Yeah. Have I been pwned? And that's
we have a new podcast.
It's actually PWNED. I'm sorry, PWNED.
PWNED. Okay, we got to make sure we get this right. PWNED.
Yeah, you should, because like I've got an email address that I know has been pwned.
Okay. Okay.
And it's an old email address I used to use the same password for everything. And when I put it in here, it shows me that my particular email address has shown up in data sets on the dark web. In other words, big, huge data breaches from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know, maybe 15 different sites, including like Last.fm, LinkedIn, Forbes, Kickstarter, Daily Motion, Cafe Press, Adobe's website, the Android forums, all these different websites that get hacked. And the problem is your data's now out there. Your email address and possibly your password that you use in 12 different places is out there. So yes, if you're using, Amanda's running to, she's either checking her phone or she's changing all of her passwords right now.
Oh my God, it's the first thing that pops up when you type in have I been, and it's pwned.com.
So yeah, using those tools like Dashlane or 1Password or Keeper or whatever those legitimate tools are, they are very useful because it means you're going to be slightly more secure by having different passwords.
I think that's good to know. And then my last question is, how often do you change your passwords?
Well, okay, so it's a good question. Rotating your passwords is useful, but passwords are not security. Just like this is not a hacker. This isn't what hackers look like. Passwords are not what security looks like. Passwords are important. You know, you don't want to be your dog's name and your mother's maiden name as your password or anything like that. But if you have secure passwords and they're, 10, 12 characters long because you're using 13 characters long because you're using Dashlane and there are a bunch of weird characters, you don't need to change them all the time. If there is a data breach on a website, the nice thing about using something like Dashlane is that, sure, your data's out there, your email address and the password you used for that website may be there, but you only used it in one place. Doesn't matter. It was a disposable password anyway. So they're not going to be able to use that password to get into your email. Once they have your email password, your SOL, because that's where all of your password reset emails come to.
Oh, yeah.
That's the most important password you have is your main email address. So if it's the one we use a lot too. So sometimes we tend to make it something we can remember. But if I have Amanda's email address password, I can reset all of Amanda's banking passwords and transfer all of Amanda's money to a numbered account in the Cayman Islands. So again, it's important, but security is much more about a total mindset. And you can't there is no silver bullet. There are no tools that will make you more secure unless you use those tools as part of a protocol and a way.
A mindset, like you were talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a protocol of living, and it's you have to make decisions that are secure.
It's adopting changes that might not seem easy at first, but that will benefit your overall security long term.
Those changes, they're a lot easier than replacing $10,000.
Yeah.
So
totally.
What's it worth to you? What is your security? What is the security of your data worth to you? How much data?
Data is more valuable than oil, from what I've heard. So. Well,
you can steal. Well, just like one thing we didn't really touch on. and is something that also is to keep in mind is identity theft. The process of purchasing a home is the ripe with opportunities for identity theft. So all of that information you were talking about, that other information and how it can be used, all those little pieces of information about your address and your information about banks and your where you work and all of that stuff, all of the information can be used by someone who doesn't even want to get your money during a transaction. They're gonna store that information and use it later for maybe a spear phishing attack, or they're going to use it for identity theft, or they're going to, make transactions in your name or get credit cards or whatever. But it's that process, the whole, buying a home process is just ripe with opportunity, which is why it's a process that is getting a lot of attention from people who are looking to exploit you.
Yep. Well,
Right.
I feel like we could talk about this for
I know.
many more hours, but I gotta go show a property. Which is why I jumped, because I was like, oh shoot, what time is it?
Well,
It
hey,
is.
this has been awesome, Alec. Thank you so much. What a
Glad to
great.
help.
Oh,
Yeah,
this is
thank
so
you.
good. And with that, we ran out of time, but I think we got to have you back. So
I agree.
we'll talk
Amanda
about
knows how to get a hold of me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks again, Alex. I appreciate it.
Thanks. We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Bye.